What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Charter Podcast, brought to you by St. Xavier University. Ruthie Polinsky, Alex Shapiro, 𝗗cie𝗶𝗹 back here with you on this Super Bowl Monday. We're going to talk and react to all things Super Bowl because, wow, what a day, what a game. We have so much to get to. 𝗗cie𝗶𝗹 is joining us live from the city of brotherly love because he had an unbelievable experience last night getting to be a part of radio broadcast. 𝗗cie, you tell us I don't want to do this for you. You tell us what you got to do last night. Tell us what's the vibe in Philly, what's happening, and then we'll sort of get into the game and get some reaction.
Yeah, so obviously I played for the Eagles. You guys, if you guys watched last week's episode or listened to it, I was wearing my old Eagles jersey, the game-worn jersey, and I got the opportunity to host the the halftime, and the post-game shows for 94 WIP, which is like it's an 𝗦cie station. It's basically the 670 the score of Philadelphia. And they won the Super Bowl, and just being able to talk to the fans and kind of being the voice for this special day in Philadelphia after playing there for so long. And obviously Andy Reid was my coach too. It just had a lot of brought back a lot of nostalgia for me, and was definitely a special broadcast, a special day to see how elated the fans were calling in, excited everybody was. It made me want it for my hometown and my childhood team and the team that I love and the team that we talk about and love, our Chicago Bears. And hopefully in the near future, we could be having that same experience in Chicago instead of Philadelphia, where I'm at right now.
No, 𝗗cie, Philly is still standing?
Surprisingly, it's still standing. Last night, I wasn't sure it was going to be. It was like 476 AD. I'm a history nerd. My first 2 years of college, I actually studied ancient history. That's when Rome fell, to the Goth invaders. It was something like that outside in the streets of Philadelphia. But I woke up this morning, and there's some trash and some stuff on the road, some Eagles memorabilia that didn't make it through the night. But all in all, Philly's still here.
Did you go out last night, 𝗗cie?
I did not. The show, we didn't get out of there until after 2 a.m. because we had so many cars stuff. So it was a long night, and the traffic was backed up, and I had to walk from the station, which was fine. It was like a 25-minute walk, a little cold, but it was pretty crazy and a late night in studio.
You didn't climb any telephone poles?
I was thinking about it, but I didn't make it out in time. The cops had already broken up all the festivities, and there was just cops on the street. Please go home on their megaphones. Everybody disperse. Please go home. So it was pretty much over by the time I got out of the 𝗦cie studio out here in Philly.
𝗗cie, and Alex, I want to get your reaction too, but 𝗗cie, since you were on the call, I mean, wow, what a performance from the Eagles. I think, there were definitely some people that picked the Eagles to win that game, but I don't know. I did not see anyone predict a blowout, really, other than Eric Kramer on our Big Pro Football show. He said at least a 10-point win, which we'll talk about today on our show. But I mean, I could not believe just the sheer dominance that they displayed from literally kickoff. What was sort of your initial reaction to just sort of seeing how much they were rattling, not just how well they were executing, but just the way that defense was rattling Patrick Mahomes and his inability to sort of recover from it?
Okay. I mean, the first thing we got to talk about is that Eagles defensive line. We were wondering what they were going to do. And I went back and I did some research, obviously, for the show and everything. And one of the things I came across was Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins last year, and he zero blitzed Patrick Mahomes 18 times. And he actually had relative success when he zero blitzed him. So I'm coming into this, I'm like, okay, maybe Fangio is just going to light him up. He's just going to heat him up all game long. And he did the exact opposite. And he came out and he didn't send one blitz the whole game. 0 blitzes, 26 pressures, 6 sacks, a 43% pressure percentage. Patrick Mahomes looked like a tap dancer. He was like a rockette. I don't know. Those aren't tap dancers, actually. But he looked like he was tap dancing in the pocket. He just couldn't get comfortable from the opening snap. It's like, who is this guy playing quarterback? It looked more to me like Mitch Trubisky, one of the old Bear quarterbacks, and it was Patrick Mahomes with Andy Reid calling the plays. That goes to show you, if you can get pressure with your front four and build in the trenches, Then you saw the Eagles, Jalen Hurts had an average 3.37 second time to throw, which is incredible. I think that's the longest in the Super Bowl era. So I think people, we got to start changing, having conversations on, well, first of all, Fangio, one of the top defensive coordinators in history, and then Jalen Hurts. The performances he's had in the NFC Championship games and the Super Bowl has been incredible. And I think he was a well-won MVP in the postseason at 26 years old. His career record is 46-20, 6-3 in the postseason, 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, 2 NFC championships, 2 Super Bowl appearances, a Super Bowl victory, and an MVP. Start giving this guy a little bit of credit. I know they say it's his team. He had Saquon Barkley. Guess what? Saquon Barkley had over 20 carries and didn't pop 60 yards. Okay, this was done by the defense, and this was done by Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex, go ahead.
You look at what the Chiefs' game plan appeared to be. It was do not let Saquon Barkley beat us and make Jalen Hurts beat us. And the Chiefs did a really good job. Saquon Barkley was pretty much bottled up, and Jalen Hurts did beat them. I mean, he really did. And then, to underline the zero blitz thing, the fact that they had 40% pressure rate, as you said, Clay, and did that with 4 guys. We're able to drop 7 guys in coverage the entire night. I mean, that's impossible. I don't care who you have.
No trick. No tricks. It was over. It was 60% quarters coverage, Alex. This was zone. This was rush 4. They weren't tricking anybody.
That's outrageous. So Patrick Mahomes is tap dancing. He's running around. He's holding onto the ball. But where is he supposed to go? Because it's not just like it's 7 on, 5. Sometimes it's 7 on 3 because you're leaving in 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹 to block. You're leaving in Travis Kelce to block. So it's 7 guys covering 3 dudes. I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible. And the fact that the Eagles could get home with 4 over and over and over and over, why would you do anything else? They did it from the jump. So truly masterclass by that Eagles defense. And the other thing, it's funny, you mentioned Mitchell Trubisky. To me, while I was watching that game, I had the thought, I think we're getting a look at what Patrick Mahomes would have looked like if the Chicago Bears had drafted him.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't have an offensive line. And, it's shades of Caleb Williams too. Did Caleb Williams hold the ball on for too long at points this season? Did he force some throws that, maybe a little bit hero ball? Yeah, he did. But the offensive line was bad. And, sometimes guys weren't getting open. So it looked like what we saw last night. So, Ruthie, it seems like you're right there with me. Ruthie, get in here.
I said the same thing to my husband last night. I go, that looks like the 2024 Chicago Bears offense. Like, no one's open. The quarterback's running for his life. He's running around trying to make plays. You're screaming at the TV, throw it away, get rid of the ball. Like, you're not seeing guys coming in your face. It really felt like just Patrick Mahomes just seemed lost, which is such a strange thing to say about someone. 2 days ago, we were talking about, is he the greatest quarterback of all time? And so I just wonder, what this means for him. And, I know a lot of the quotes after the game, like, he's human, right? Like, he's going to have days like that. The offensive line was absolutely wrecked. And it just shows you again, and we're going to get into this, but, what's the formula to build a team? And, how, a quarterback can be the greatest, right? There's no question that Patrick Mahomes is probably still, even after last night, the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now. He's the best. He is the guy to beat. But there are ways to beat him. And you saw the Eagles' formula to do that last night. And it was really special. It was fun to watch for about a quarter and a half. And then I said, they better do something. Otherwise, I'm going to be mad. And like, I in the third quarter, I look at the clock. I'm like, how are there 8 minutes left in the third quarter? Like, they are getting destroyed. And it still felt like, up until that point, we're like, come on, Patrick, like, be Patrick. Like, you can maybe make this interesting. Like, let's get maybe a defensive turnover for the Chiefs and, get good field position, get a quick score, cover an onside kick. You're like, this could be a 28-3 situation. But the Chiefs, never could they get anything going until really all the backups were in for the Eagles.
Interesting. It's interesting. You mentioned how do you beat the Chiefs? How do you beat Patrick Mahomes? It reminds me of the Bucs Super Bowl. It also reminds me of the Seahawks Broncos Super Bowl. I mean, it was that level of dominant where Peyton Manning couldn't do anything against that Seahawks defense. But to bring it back to Mahomes and the Chiefs, in that game, they had tackle issues. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. He was making spectacular plays, but he was running for his life. Here, again, we joked about Darnell Wright coming in and potentially helping the Chiefs as a backup tackle. He probably could have, because they had the left tackle issue. Clay, to your credit, you brought it up a bunch. Mike Caliendo is playing left guard because Joe Thuney is playing left tackle. So now you got two subpar guys at two spots because that's a big issue. Joe Thuney was exposed. Mike Caliendo was exposed. You know, they couldn't figure out that tackle position, so now they were bad at two spots. The trenches are everything. We've said it so much.
It's huge.
The trenches.
It shows you how important it is, even with a guy like Patrick Mahomes. You look at that first half. Listen to this: 6 of 14 for 33 yards, 2 interceptions. The Eagles had more points in the first half than the Chiefs had yards. Okay, this is incredible. Patrick Mahomes' worst QBR, his worst completion percentage, his worst quarterback rating ever. Not in the Super Bowl, not in the NFC Championship, the play ever. So just to see how much a dominant defensive line can do for you, and a very good offensive line, because you saw how the Eagles' offensive line, obviously they couldn't run the ball as well as they wanted to, but they did give Jalen Hurts the time to throw the ball. You got the big pass to Devontae Smith, a couple big plays by Goddard and A.J. Brown, and that's all he needed. Jahan Dotson sighting, they made that move, and it really goes to show you what building through the trenches can do for you. And I think that's obviously what the Bears need to do, and we all know, we've been talking about it, but if you don't have to send extra rushers and you got all those guys in coverage and you are still getting pressure, I don't care who you are. The games that Brady lost in the Super Bowl, those are the games when that happened. So that's how important that is. It's arguably the most important part of football.
Realistically, guys, how long do you think that takes for the Bears to sort of fix the trenches, right? Because in theory, the Bears need 4 new starting offensive linemen. Braxton Jones, I think, is a solid option at left tackle, but you need to fix the interior of the offensive line. And then the defensive line, you got Big Bill coming back, but he's coming off a big injury. Braxton Jones, again, to go back to the offensive line, also coming off of a season-ending massive injury. And, I just, you have Montez Sweat, but he sort of, maybe he battled through some things last year, didn't have a great year. What's the realistic timeline, and how close can the Bears get? Because when you think about, okay, well, if they fix the trenches, if they bulk up the trenches, they have the pieces on the outside to be really successful. So if they could just focus and beef that up, what does that look like in your mind this offseason? Alex, I'll start with you.
I think they can do it quicker than maybe some people expect, because they have a ton of resources that they're to spend, they can spend out. Cap space, I want to say they're near the top 5, if not in the top 5 in cap space. And there are guys who are going to be available. It's unclear if Trey Smith is going to hit the market. Mekhi Becton played really great. We're going to talk more about these guys later. There are pieces there, right, in free agency. Same on the defensive line. The Bears also have top 10 pick, 2 more in the top 50. They got 71. So they've got some really valuable draft picks. Now they can do a number of things with those draft picks. Mm-hmm. They could use them to draft guys and continue to build out those trenches. They can trade them away like what they did to help land Jervon Dexter and Caleb Williams, right? I mean, that's great assets. If Myles Garrett is truly, truly pushing his way out of town, could the Bears send the number 10 pick this year, another first, maybe something else, bring in Myles Garrett and really jumpstart that defensive line? So there are various ways that the Bears can go about this, whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft, whether it's trade. They have a lot of ammunition at their disposal that, you could see them making great strides in this upcoming offseason so that in 1-2 years, maybe they are set up for success in the trenches. Again, if they really, really focus on the trenches, which they can, because they got a lot of really good skill players.
And I also think the other side of that, Alex, is you got to look at the development of these guys. And I think the Bears got a much better developmental staff with a ton of experience of developing players than they did the previous years, right? I'm not saying that they have Jeff Stoutland, but I think, now you got a really good offensive line coach. And I think with Ben Johnson's system, he plays to his players' strength a lot. So another side of that, you get a couple more pieces in there. And then you got a system that is geared towards your quarterback, getting your quarterback on the move, the quick passes, just doing things to really help your offensive line if you do have a weakness, if you do have an injury, and not just, okay, we're going to drop back and just try to fit this guy into my system. And if it doesn't work, he's going to get sacked 68 times in a season. I don't think that's going to happen under Ben Johnson, especially with the staff that he has put together of a lot of veteran coaches. So I think another reason that the Bears will be a lot better up front is because of the development, the change in scheme, the fresh perspective on players, looking at their strengths and weaknesses. It's a fresh start for a lot of guys. And I've been in this position. It's refreshing. It's like a breath of fresh air when you bring in a new coaching staff or go to a new coaching staff, because now you can reinvent yourself almost, and you can build this trust that maybe you didn't have before, and you can show them what type of player you are. So along with you saying, which is a good point, you do have a lot of capital. You have good draft picks. You have the top 10 pick. You have an extra second this year. And then to go along with that, you have the top 5 money to spend in free agency. I think we're saying 5th. So you got a lot to work with here, and there will be some names that will eventually hit the market. And I know we don't know which guys the Chiefs are going to pick to keep, which guy the Eagles are going to pick to keep. And it's going to go on until we actually hit the free agency frenzy. A lot of that will happen at the combine. You'll find out which guys are going to actually hit the open market. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think they can change it faster, and that's because of this new coaching staff.
So I just looked it up. According to Spot Rack, the Bears are 4th in cap space right now with nearly $66 million to spend.
And listen, the way the Bears are spending right now on that head coach. So set the tone a little bit. We're not afraid to spend. It'll be interesting to see if they don't spend, because maybe they just spent it all on the head coach. But no, I do see them sort of going out there and feeling like they're in, and I know we said this last offseason that the Bears were in a win now mode. And that was the feeling you got when they drafted Rome Odunze at number 9, being like, we're good everywhere else. We can add more skill. And so, it'll be interesting to see sort of how they use all of the resources to beef up this roster. And I want to just make sure we talk a little bit about the quarterback play last night, because the way Jalen Hurts was able to play within the system, I think is so important, because all of the things that Caleb Williams does that's so amazing is the stuff that he does off script, the scramble plays, the throwing on the move, the working out of the pocket. Watching Jalen Hurts play, he had lots of time, but just his footwork and the way he throws the ball and the timing he has with his receivers and the running backs and all the skill players, the tight end. I was just watching this being like, man, and you see that with Jared Goff too, right? When you watch Jared Goff play, he's able to play within the system, his rhythm, his timing, it's all there. So you just hope that that's sort of the next step for Caleb Williams in this Ben Johnson system, that he's able to still be able to do the amazing things when he needs to, but that's not his first option. And I just was watching Jalen Hurts play last night being like, I can't believe that he's the better quarterback tonight because of the way that he was playing, so crisp. It was so easy for him. And of course, having a great offensive line helps.
And he rebounded after the big mistake. Patrick Mahomes, they each made big mistakes early, and Patrick Mahomes uncharacteristically continued to make mistakes. He could have had another interception at the beginning of the game before the Cooper DeJean pick 6. The Zach Bond one's a little tough because Josh Sweat is in his lap, courtesy Joe Toney. But he continued to put the ball in harm's way. Jalen Hurts threw an interception in the red zone. that's something that like, oh, this is the moment that the Chiefs are going to take over. He really turned around after that moment, put that behind him and really played really well, making good decisions, like, as you said, in the rhythm of the offense, but also knowing when to take off and when to slide. Yeah. He was so good making decisions, scrambling as well. So yeah, great to bring that up, Ruthie.
And I know that this is obviously a Bears podcast, but like Jalen Hurts is a guy that I think, unjustly gets a lot of hate because like, oh, the tush push and stuff like that. What other quarterback squat 600 pounds is going to be able to do the tush push? They're going to get hurt. Jalen Hurts is a guy that welcomes that wants to do that. Then you look at his numbers. Yeah, they only threw the ball 22 times, but he was 17-22, 293 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 120 passer rating in the Super Bowl. And his numbers were eerily similar in the last Super Bowl. I don't think this is the last we're going to see a Jalen Hurts. And watching this game, it made me think like they're not identical players, but there's some similarities between him and Caleb. They're both mobile. They both, can sling the ball. And obviously Caleb has a little bit of, I think he's like a mixture of Mahomes and Hurts. He's not quite Mahomes, but he's not the Hurts type player. But I think we'll see some of the things the Eagles took advantage of. And you could see that, Ben Johnson, when he's drawn up this playbook, you didn't see it in Detroit. He had a specific type of running game. But when you're able to use the quarterback, yeah, they didn't run well with Barkley. Guess who had over 70-something yards because they were so focused on stopping Barkley? Jalen Hurts. You know who else can run and move? I'm not saying he's Jalen Hurts. I'm not saying he's that big and strong, but Caleb. Caleb's an elusive and a fast guy. You can run some of that zone read, some of that power with a read, and you're going to pull an extra defender out of the box. And if they don't want to do that and they want to stop your running back, like you saw the Chiefs trying to stop Barkley, Hurts is just going to pull that thing. Hurts needs to shake Barkley's hand for those 75 rushing yards that he also got in the touchdown, because a lot of that had to do with them stopping Barkley, and Caleb can do a lot of those things. You can't just commit your whole team to the running back. Caleb is fast enough to run. I know Ben Johnson's going to take advantage of that. Not too much. We don't want to get hurt. But you see the Super Bowl winning quarterback did that. Caleb can do a lot of the same things.
Hurts is a guy that's just so easy to root for because of his story. And like you said, Clay, I think just a lot of that sort of unwarranted sort of like hate and shade he gets for like when he makes mistakes. He's phenomenal. And I love listening to him speak and talk because he's incredibly even keeled, doesn't get high, doesn't get low. And that to me also reminds me of Caleb. I just think Caleb's the same guy. Every time we talk to him, he's the same guy, whether win, lose. Obviously there were moments of frustration, as I think anyone would, but just sort of, there is something there to that sort of, you want to see that from a quarterback and sort of the personality of Jalen Hurts that I think was fun to sort of see on such a massive stage last night. And then the other thing I was going to point out, did anyone notice how, I don't know if anyone was watching the ESPN like post-game broadcast, and they had Saquon and 𝗏 they gave birthday cake. They gave them birthday cake for their birthdays. Did you guys see this?
No.
And they were sort of handing out the birthday cake, and they gave cake to everyone. The broadcasters, Jalen Hurts and Saquon were sitting at the desk, and then Cooper DeJean was behind them, and they were eating cake. And Saquon is scarfing this cake down because, like, they're starving, right, Clay? Like after the game, you're starving. He hasn't eaten in 4 hours, right? DeJean scarfing this cake down, right? Jalen Hurts, cool, calm, and collected, doesn't even look at the cake. And I'm like, this guy just won the freaking Super Bowl, won MVP, and he's not going to eat the sugar. Like, God bless that man for that self-control and that. But I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was watching him. I was like, is he not going to eat the cake? I'm like,
yeah.
This man just won the Super Bowl. Have some freaking cake, Like,
you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of when there's a birthday at the studio over at CHSN, and everybody's going into the birthday room, and they're getting the cookies, they're getting the ice cream, they're getting the cake. But who's not getting the cake? Who's staying away from the cake when it looks and smells good?
Clay,
you did an entire podcast in the cake room when it smelled like cake and still resisted. I have no idea how you did that.
Clay, you're a specimen. And that's why. Yeah. That's why you look the way you do, and that's why we look the way we do. No, I'm just teasing.
You guys look great. But that's a great point.
Cake every time.
That is a great point about Hurts. I love his mentality. And some people think that it's like, dude, show some personality. That's him. There's people out there. I know a lot of guys on this Eagles team still. I mean, I know a lot of people in this organization. Jalen Hurts is 100% football. And people think that doesn't have a personality, think maybe it's a little, what are these words and these quotes he's using? That's him. That's who he is. And that's the kind of leader I want as a quarterback. I
do want to talk quickly, Clay, and you can touch on this maybe, but, Travis Kelce, tight end to tight end. I imagine you haven't spoken to him since last night, but what's sort of your gut feeling about his future and what this means for him and really just the Chiefs organization as a whole? Where do they go from here? What does the future look like for them? Does this change the way that you think about this quote unquote dynasty? What's your sort of tie up your feelings about the Chiefs for me?
Oh yeah, it changes it. I mean, we got to shelf the GOAT discussion, at least for a few minutes, until you see Patrick Mahomes go back a couple more. You never saw Tom Brady, this happen to him. He's gotten beat. He hasn't gotten beat like that. He hasn't just come up and just completely laid an egg in the Super Bowl. And obviously it wasn't his fault, a lot of it, but a lot of it was. He wasn't himself. He wasn't out there making plays. And yeah, you can say it was the pressure. It was. But still, if you're the GOAT, you got to find a way to do enough to find a path to victory. It definitely changes things. But I think there is something we can go off of here in this situation. This isn't the first Super Bowl the Chiefs have lost. They've lost Super Bowl. Guess what? They come back, they retool, they see where their weaknesses are, and I think that's what makes them so great. And they fix those weaknesses, and they find a new way to win, a new path to victory. I think Brett Veach, Andy Reid, they're both so good at that. They're going to find a way. They're going to say, here's our weaknesses, and they're going to start with up front. They've drafted a number of guys and missed. Look at the Chiefs. They missed on tons of their names are eluding me. Yeah, a lot of tackles. They tried to sign one. Then you have to move your left guard to tackle and move in Mike Caliendo, but they missed. But with that 31st pick in the NFL draft, they're going to draft a tackle. In free agency, they're going to try to keep Smith. If they can't, they're going to get somebody else in there. Andy Reid is a guy that knows his strengths, knows his weaknesses. Brett Veach is a great roster constructor. So I think that they'll bounce back from this because we've seen it before. They've lost the Super Bowl, and they've come back, and guess what? The next year, they won.
Alex, what about you? What does this mean for you regarding the Chiefs?
It doesn't really change how I feel about them too much because what they've accomplished up to this point is still impressive. I mean, was that an whooping? Yeah, it was. The score was 40-22 or whatever it was, and it really wasn't that close. But kind of to echo Clay's sentiments, I do believe they will be back. I still believe Patrick Mahomes is an incredible player. And was it eye-opening? I mean, sure was. But I don't think it diminishes what they've done in the past. And it doesn't really make me feel like their future is now in jeopardy. They still have Patrick Mahomes. I think it was probably eye-opening that they thought, hey, this Joe Thuney, Mike Caliendo Band-Aid that we got going on, we can ignore it. Because it's working now, and they probably won't ignore that in the future. They're probably going to make sure that they got that swing tackle thing figured out early because they did have an opportunity to address the swing tackle thing throughout the year. So, yeah, Tom Brady is still going to be the GOAT for a little bit. What was Tom Brady? 7-3 in Super Bowls, and now Mahomes is 3-2. I mean, it was always Mahomes has work to do to catch Tom Brady. This will delay it for a little bit. I still fully expect the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes to be Super Bowl contenders again next year.
I saw an unbelievable stat last night that I'm trying to dig up as we speak right now. I believe it was from 𝗟𝗶𝗹 𝗟𝗀, but I'm pretty sure there was something along the lines, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, just right off the top of your head. But in every Super Bowl Tom Brady played in, he walked off the field in the fourth quarter with the lead. And then it was another team that either came back and won or he won the game. So I just, that to me says so much. And I think the two Super Bowls that Mahomes has lost, he's lost by combined 40 points or something. Now this is killing me. Hold on. Oh, here it is. Jeff Howe. Tom Brady was 7-3 in the Super Bowl. He walked off the field in the fourth quarter with the lead in all 10 games. Patrick Mahomes is 3-2 in the Super Bowl. His 2 losses were combined 40 points. Tells you a lot.
Wow.
To me.
I don't think Tom Brady was
there.
ever under duress like Patrick Mahomes was, though. I mean,
Yeah,
again,
because that wasn't the player he
licking
was.
that defensive line put on them, I mean, was outrageous. And this also goes to Tom Brady not really getting paid like the top quarterback and understanding, hey, give that money to some offensive linemen in front of me so that they can protect me. Patrick Mahomes gets paid a ton of money. He deserves every single penny. I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes doesn't deserve the money. He absolutely does. But, you know, you could see that Tom Brady kind of deferring that contract and I don't think he ever made $25 million until he went to the Buccaneers and he was like, all right, now actually pay me. Right. So you see a little bit in that. I think it's a bit apples to oranges. Like if Tom Brady had been heated up in those 2 games, like Patrick Mahomes was, I'm interested to see how it would have turned out.
But that's not how those New England teams were built, because that wasn't the player that Tom was. Tom was play in rhythm, play with timing, you know, be a game manager, as, you know, he talked about yesterday, which I thought was, you know, interesting, how that's the greatest compliment a quarterback can get, to be a game manager. And I think that's the system that he played in. And because in the offensive lines were always the strength of the team, usually because that they knew they needed that in order to get the most out of Tom. So yeah, speaking of Tom Brady, I know he's getting a lot of heat over his broadcasting. I think he's gotten so much better over the course of this season. I actually really enjoyed listening to him last night, and I feel like that's maybe an unpopular opinion, but I thought, you know, you can say what you want about, you know, the criticism and those sorts of the lack of criticism, I guess, that he had for Mahomes in the game, which is something that I've sort of been hearing circulating, but I don't know. I just thought he was entertaining. You cannot dock him for his entertainment value. I just think he is high energy. He loves the game. He's played a lot of games. He's played in a lot of Super Bowls. He has great stories. And I think he deserves some flowers for coming in his first season on a play-by-play ends in a Super Bowl with the entire world watching. So
he's a rookie. He's a
rookie. Exactly.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's that. So calling games, and I know we're getting a little off topic here, and I've done it at a much smaller level, just calling the Missouri Valley or the MAC, whatever games I've called. It is hard to find a rhythm there. And I know because he became the #1 Fox broadcaster, and Greg Olsen is so good at what he does, but Greg Olsen has had a lot of time to kind of put this together. And because Tom Brady is who he is, and like you said, Ruth, he has all those stories and those experiences. You want that guy in the Super Bowl, a guy with 7 Super Bowl wins. Yeah, you want him to call the game. He's won more Super Bowls than anybody. So yeah, there's criticism there because maybe the flow wasn't the exact way that people wanted it. He wasn't criticizing Mahomes enough, and he was putting it on the line and the pressure. I thought Tom did a fine job. He's not Greg Olsen yet, but I think he can get there. Yeah,
agreed. Guys, we kind of ran out of time, but we're going to talk more about, you know, the Bears and how this whole storyline relates to the Bears. We're going to have all week to talk about this. But, you know, there are going to be some free agents that just played in the Super Bowl, whether they won or they lost, who are going to be worthy of consideration for the Bears. So let's talk about that on Wednesday, because there are some pieces that I think Ryan Poles could try and go target and make this Bears team a lot better just by signing 1 or 2 of those guys. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday. You guys good with that? And then we'll wrap this thing up. Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah.
I'm getting nods. Our viewers.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Let me take one more victory lap for just 30 seconds. Just
please,
proud of these Eagles.
Play.
Proud to be a former player, the way that they played defensively, offensively. Jalen Hurts. There's only 2 quarterbacks in history that have completed over 70% of their passes and scored 3 touchdowns in multiple Super Bowls. Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts. I mean, just incredible for him, incredible for Fangio. Start giving Nick Sirianni some flowers. It's been great to see how they put this thing together. Well done, Philadelphia Eagles. Hopefully the Bears, Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, hopefully we'll see the Bears there soon. And I know next week we're going to have a list of free agents for you. Alex is hard at work looking at the free agent list. I'm going to start diving into, and we're going to give you guys the best free agent that the Bears can go after. And we're going to find some bargain deals in there, but we're going to get some big names too.
I love it. Yeah, Nick Sirianni, we didn't really get a chance to talk about him, but man, that guy's done so much for his sort of reputation this year. And just the turnaround. I mean, early in the season, Clay, you remember that everyone wanted him fired. Like,
dude was on the hot seat in the first month of the year.
And like, how great for him to go just silence the haters and win the whole damn thing. I mean, it's a cool story. That Philly team, you can say what you want about Eagles fans, right? Because those are some interesting ones. But that Philly team is so lovable. It's so there's so many great stories, such great personalities. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Mekhi Becton, Nick Sirianni, these guys, Vic Fangio. Like, there's just so many great stories. And so I think it's easy for, people like us, Alex, who don't have a dog in the fight necessarily. Like, it's an easy team to be happy for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Oh, that was it. You know what? I'm going to get better at ending these things one of these days. Thank you so much for listening to the Charter Podcast brought to you by St. Xavier University. Alex Shapiro, Clay Harbor, I'm Ruthie Polinsky. We'll see you back here later this week.